Okay. So Parker, would you like to start us off?
Absolutely. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Lamar Parker. I am a financial professional specializing in the mortgage process as well as your basic um, financial planning. Um, my goal, as Nancy already stated, is to just give you just to spark some thought in your brain of not only how to go about, you know, thinking about generational wealth, but the process, the thought process that goes into where you're at now and how to get to where you want to be.
Thank you. And my name is Nancy Andino. I am a clinical social worker who specializes in trauma therapy, particularly eye movement and desensitization and reprocessing, along as a gestalt therapist. I am a person that enjoys being able to share information with colleagues, my clients, so anything that I become aware of, I try my best to share it and have the individual have their own experience with it. I am very straightforward. I challenge, I push, I nudge, and I offer love and affection at the same time. This project means a lot because we always talk about, people are always talking about finances, but they don't really are not as transparent as I feel like we should be or need to be in order to gain a better understanding about finances in general, right? Even with my friends, one of the things that we started getting vulnerable with finances was when we actually shared our paychecks. Like, how much do you make? Well, I make this and that, and that allowed our relationships to actually deepen because of our ability to be as transparent as possible. And it allows us to be able to have more conversations about finances, which brought about the mental health aspect of it, right? And with working with clients, having them check their statements, their Uber Eats, their, what is it, the DoorDash, and their credit card statements, and the anxiety that they would experience as they were doing that, started infiltrating our sessions. So I felt, and we those sessions started becoming more of financial awareness. And I'm not a finance expert, but from a mental health perspective, and then it evolved into this project that we're doing now. And this is our first official Zoom webinar on generational wealth. And I think that can be a little challenging topic for folks, particularly people of color. So let us begin.
Started.
Yes. So you're like, how do you feel about money? And if you have a pen and paper, I want you to be able to make this an experiential experience for you where you're documenting, right? So what are your first thoughts about money? What are the emotions and sensations that show up for you? What are some of the memories that come up as it relates to money in your household, money as a child? So for me, money in my household, I don't even remember having the conversations, at least in Puerto Rico growing up. When we came to the States, that's when it became more of a bigger thing. So having to pay rent and having to get enough money to pay for food and public assistance, and how did that work, and watching my mom make, I don't know how she did it, like from pennies to dollars for us to be able to have food. I don't know where she got that skill, but I'm still trying to borrow some of those tips. So that's how it was in my household,
Mhm.
where I do recall certain times like, no, we can't have that because we have no money.
Right.
But I wasn't a kid that asked for a lot of things. I wasn't in a lot of things. Oh, I want this, I want that type of kid. So I think I had a very different experience, and I was raised as
Mhm.
an only child. So what was your experience with that, Parker?
I think, and mine was similar to yours. I think it was more of a survival, right?
Mhm.
We make decisions based on being able to survive and get to the next paycheck, or survive and just to be able to, maintain our rent or our basic bills. There wasn't necessarily a thought process of how do I grow, which is two different mindsets and two different actions that we have to take and how we we talk about growth and what money making decisions are we making? Money making activities, I like to call them MMA. What money making activities are we engaging in to grow, or are we engaging in to just survive? And I think, like you said, my parents were, we did discuss money, but it was more the most basic, elementary discussion about money. What are your bills? How much you making? Do you have enough? Do you make enough to pay off your bills? Saving was not really, it was kind of like you're saving for a rainy day, but you're not saving to grow, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, right? And
Mhm.
so that's what I mean when I say the survival. Our money making activities were more survival than growth. And if you're talking about generational wealth, building to the next generation, you have to you have to do more than survive. You have to really think about, how do I grow? What am I putting my money towards? Am I putting it towards growth investments, or am I putting it towards safe, um, monetary not even investments? They're just in a savings account or in a checking account to pay bills. And
Yeah.
so that's where we were at.
And as you were sharing that, one of the things that came up for me is in my household, it was gender driven. So as a
Mhm.
woman, you always have to have something to the side just in case, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it wasn't so much about growing it, it was more like just in case, as a
Mhm.
woman, as a young lady, you should always have money on the side just
Hmm.
in case things happen when you are in partnership, in romantic partnership with somebody.
Really?
On with, there can always be, some savings to the side just for emergencies, but you got to make
Mm.
sure that you have your little money to the side just in case, right? So
Yeah, I
gender
can see that.
also plays a role in this.
I think being that I'm a male, I didn't view although I knew my mother had her stash, I didn't necessarily see it as gender. I just thought that that was just like an emergency money for her. But now that you say it, it definitely, the way my mother and father thought about money was totally, totally different. My
Hmm.
father thought, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna spend it, and it's gonna be more when I get there. My mother was like, let's save for a rainy day.
Yeah.
Right? Let's save just in case something happens, just in case an emergency comes up. So I didn't think about it that way as far as gender, but that's a good idea, good thought process.
Yeah. And if you have any stories or memories that show up, you want to share it in the chat, absolutely welcome to that, where we can get into even more details if you need. So, but the important things about these emotions and sensations and some of the disturbing experiences that people can have with this is our lived experiences actually begin to impact how we respond, right? How we respond with finances now, how we're going to be responding towards the future, the anxieties that may show up because of what we witnessed growing up. One thing is that, well, that happened then, this is now. And what happened then is actually ingrained in your nervous system. And
Hmm.
what happens then begins to happen now. And if we're not able to be fully aware of what's happening now and be able to differentiate between, oh, this is old, this is my parents, this is actually mine that I've learned, this is how I can integrate it, then we end up, making the same mistakes they've made, or just the same decisions for different money, right? Because at this point, we're making more money than our parents may have made in a different societal environment.
Let me ask you something, Nancy. I just thought about something. Um, you are successful in your profession. You do well for yourself. Is there within you, like every time your payment for your home is due, is there a little tension that you get? Like when
Mm-hmm.
it right? And I was thinking about when my parents around like the first of every month when they had to, and back then, I don't want to date myself. That was like the 80s. Rent was like a couple $100. It wasn't even what it is now. But there was always some level of like nervousness or tension, or I got to make sure I have the money to the. It was like, if you didn't get that check to the rent office, things went haywire
In
on
the
that
home,
day. Yes.
in
So
the
I,
home.
I was just thinking, even myself, when it's time to pay, like even though I'm not concerned about it, there's still a little level of tension.
Mhm.
And when you said what happens then, that's what happened then. So transversely, I get that now. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
Hmm.
For me, it's I have it set up where I pay my mortgage on a bi-weekly basis. That way you end up
Hmm.
paying more at the end and
Right.
they pick it up. So I'm glad that I have that option. But although I'm not concerned about it, it's still in the back of the head. And it
Right.
still works in the background, like, well, I always need to be able to make this amount of money to be able to pay my mortgage. And one of the things I said when I started my own business was, I need to have my bills um be as realistic and as low as possible, that if I am not successful at my profession, if I fall
Hmm.
flat on my face, that if I need to go work at McDonald's, I can still pay my bills. I was like, I have no problem. If everything gets lost, I'll just go and live with my mama for a few months until I get things in order, and have no problem with
Really.
making that if I were to have to make that decision, because I came into it with that thought.
Mm.
I need to be
Right.
able to live within my means, have my monies, and then be mindful as to how I spend. And if anything goes wrong, I need to be able to pay those bills with the least amount of money that a social worker makes, just in case.
Just in case. Right.
And that's where practicing mindfulness
Hmm.
came in for me, because I used to get this anxiety, particularly when I started working for myself. I was
Right.
like, I have to save every week. I think I have put myself every week or every other week, at least the minimum had to be 500. And the
Hmm.
minimum on a monthly basis had to be, I think, $1,200 a month I needed to save.
Okay. That was a good
But
budget.
what happened is my emotions started coming in, and my
Hmm.
emotions was like, if I can't do this $1,200 a month, because that's what I set for myself, then
Right.
I'm not doing it at all. Not that I'm not doing a good job at all of this.
Right.
And that anxiety started causing me to not want to go out to eat, not want to go hang out with friends. I know that's gonna be money,
Right.
not even buy myself some things, because I needed to meet that figure that I had set for myself at the detriment of my health. And I think sometimes that may happen to people that are getting even, they may have an increase in their salary or bringing in extra money, then
Hmm.
they start
Hmm.
spending what that salary is meant for. And then we find ourselves in a little bit of financial problems, or we set some very high savings or investment, um, what is it, money targets, and then
Okay.
stress with that, trying to meet that money target.
Right. 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 Right.
Have you ever had clients like that?
What do you mean when they get a raise or?
When I need to save this amount of money, what, no, by any means necessary.
Um, Quite honestly, I don't get as many clients like that. Like clients view if there's extra money, they've already got it earmarked for stuff they've been wanting for months. And
One
that's
thing.
the kind of, yeah, there's a thought process of wants as opposed to needs, as opposed to growth.
Mhm.
And that's usually where people, get in trouble in the way they deal with their finances. Now, I think that could be there's two theories behind that. One is when I was a child, I couldn't have anything. So now I'm going to treat myself to everything I want at this moment. Or I'm so scared like you, I'm so scared of what used to be or what could happen of me not being able to afford anything or survive, that I'm not going to spend anything. I'm not even going to invest anything. And I'm not going to think about what that process is. I'm just going to make sure everything, like I have clients that when they buy homes, they keep everything in their house. Like they have 50, $60,000 in a safe in the home,
Yeah. Yeah.
which, like that is not, I mean, I'm, to me, that's not even safe. Your home where you can get robbed, there could be a fire, at least with the bank, there's insurance, but this is the type of
That's if you
mindset.
actually trust the banks.
Right.
So
If
very
you trust the bank.
transparent, right? So if you come from a home like, Especially when disasters happen. I know in Puerto Rico when Maria happened, no one had access to their money.
Right.
No one had access to their ATM. Their
Right.
ATMs were when look,
Wasn't working.
it wasn't
Right.
working. So it's kind of like always having something in the home, but how do we keep a balance and how
Mhm.
there has to be a mindfulness aspect to this. Okay.
Yes.
I am aware that I am mindful that this is what I do. And
Hmm.
what I do, maybe I hoard money, or I overspend money, or I get very excited about money, or I start planning in advance and spending in advance for the money that I think I'm going to receive. And
Right.
then it's a whole mess of a show once the reality hits. So the
Hmm. Hmm.
mindfulness is we're in the mindfulness of being I do this, I do this, I do this is my pattern. And then the awareness kicks in like, darn it, I was not able to pay my bills. I overspent, I did this and I did all these other things. And now I am not sure as to how to go about resolving it or what action
Right.
steps to take because emotionally
Right.
now my emotions are too heightened, or I'm experiencing too much anxiety or too much worry that I go
Hmm.
into scarcity mentality.
And that's kind of where I guess where we come in, because I can absolutely lay a plan out for a client as to how you need to save for a home or how you need to build for generational wealth, right? We can write it down, email it, put it in a paper form for them to look at. But if you're not emotionally stable or emotionally aware of being able to address the plan, then you wrote the plan for nothing, right?
Yes.
It's like, drawing up a play for a basketball game or a football game, but you can't execute the play because you don't know the ABCs of getting there. And that's, that unfortunately is where people fall into a cycle of, all right, I know the plan, I can't get to the plan. I know the plan, I can't get to the plan. And it becomes a revolving door.
Which actually comes back into disturbing, traumatic, uncomfortable experiences that the person may have experienced growing up,
Hmm.
or when they may have lost everything in the market and stuff that then
Right.
there's a loss of motivation with some underlying sadness and grief that takes place,
Yes.
creating this cycle that is very difficult to create a disruption for.
Hmm. Hmm.
And which kind of brings us into our structure, right? Um, from the moment we're born into a family structure,
Right.
and we are being molded to be and become what the family structure may need, um,
Hmm.
what the expectation that has been set for us is for us to be able to fit into that mold.
Right.
And this directly impacts finances. And
Absolutely.
what people talk about generational wealth. For my child, when they're born, they're going to blah, 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 because I have this business, or I am saving money, or I am doing this. And they need to continue doing the same thing in order for the lineage after us to be able to do that. But if we don't have
Right.
a foundation for it, then this is what comes up. What comes up for you when we're talking about family structure and the other things that accompany that?
There was a time that um when I was younger, my dad was in an accident, and he just at some point there was about a year and a half, he wasn't able to work. So we had financial difficulties. And I always remember him saying this, which you just reminded me of him saying, in life, there's always gonna be a time where there's gonna be tragedy that happens to you.
Mm.
There's gonna be a financial tragedy. Now, the statement is true, like life happens, right? But I'm thinking I would have much, and it's not, I don't blame him because he just didn't know, but I think I would have changed it. I'm going to change the statement for my son is that there's going to be a tragedy that happens to you, but if you set the right foundation, you can get back on track and continue to grow or meet your whatever your goals are. And I think that's a more complete statement, because in my head, right? Because at some point in time I met a tragedy, which, financially things got rough years ago. And that's all I kept thinking of. Damn, I hit my tragedy. But the thought process wasn't, all right, I have my plan. How do I bang, 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 bang? 1, 2, 3. This is my foundation. This is what we have to do. That wasn't, it took me like 5 or 6 years to kind of snap out of that, that, that mourning process to get back on track. And I
Mhm.
think when you said that, it just sparked in my brain that, how our family structures built, the unintentional messages we send our children with our words, not necessarily intentional, not that we want them to, not get the entire message, but the words that we speak, right, generationally, the words that we speak to the next generation creates a process of how they think and how they move forward.
Yes, which also brings how they interpret that in their minds, um,
Absolutely.
how their beliefs are created, how the responsibilities that come along with that, the expectations
Absolutely.
and habits, right? Because I heard you say that, and then like, okay, we're preparing for a tragedy, and then, right?
Right.
So now we may get into the habit of I need more, more, more for
Mhm.
when this tragedy
Right.
happens, and
Right.
then in that more and more and more, our body is deteriorating, our mind
Right.
is deteriorating because we're solely focusing on that, or
Hmm.
we are under the belief of the false multitasking abilities.
Hmm.
No one can multitask. It's
Right.
unrealistic, not real,
Right. Right.
right? But if we come from certain family structures that we saw parents doing all these things, we may feel like, yes,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to
Absolutely.
do that, but you don't want to do
Mhm.
it, but that's all you saw. So you may find yourself doing the same thing and not know how to break that. When we talk about the responsibilities that come within a family structure, it's it is my responsibility to, let's say, go to school, get a good job, or
Mhm.
fall into a family business because I am responsible for how this family is the future of the family,
Right.
right?
Right.
And when those responsibilities come in, we're already coming in with a sense of anxiety, not
Hmm.
a sense of high stress, not really knowing as to where that is rooted in,
Right.
right? So that begins to build certain habits, right? And then those habits become part of our belief system. And
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
belief can
Hmm.
be, the expectation is that this is my role in my family. And since it
Right.
is my role in my family, no matter what, it has to be done and it has to be carried on with the lineage after me.
To this day, I still feel like that. I feel like I'm responsible for the next generation, whether it's cousins, whatever it is. My
Mhm.
son, I feel like it's my responsibility to give them the tools to grow forward, right?
Yes,
And
yes. It
that's
would be your
it's pressure.
responsibility on, yes, there's the pressure to that. It's just how do we create a balance for it, right? Because
Right.
now we're bringing in cultural norms
Right.
for people, the global majority community. It's we're being raised or trained to communal.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
live in the United States, which is very much not family oriented or community driven. It's
Right. Community driven. Right.
it's
Right.
very
Yes. Yes.
individualistic and white supremacy.
Hmm.
Right? So it's how do we kind of live in those polar opposites,
Right.
right? So it's how do we then it will be I'm going to identify what norms or cultural norms and family norms that are aligned with who I am now.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll take those. And then the ones that are no longer fitting, I can't do that. And then that comes with another set of
Right.
expectations and grief that it comes around that because you're not fitting into this mold, the
Right.
particular and the way it was set up for you.
I have a dichotomy for you that I live with. So I said the thought of there's always going to be a tragedy, right?
Mhm.
So that was one dichotomy. The other dichotomy is I'm the one responsible to take the next generation to the next level. So I have those two polar opposites because at one hand, I'm actually planning for failure before it actually gets here financially, right? And the other hand, I'm dealing with I got to take it to the next level. And while all these are playing part, I have no foundation of how to actually plan generationally. Like my family was on survival. So I'm dealing with survival, tragedy, next generation with no glue to actually put them together, which you're right, it causes extreme stress. You know, now I'm a little older, so I know how to manage it, but this is the way I thought at 21, 22, 23, which like that could really like take you down emotionally. It could really take
Um, this is happening in people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s right now,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
right? Because this is the responsibility that comes with having a family, and family not in the traditional American sense of
Hmm. Hmm.
family in general, and the roles that we play in these family structures.
Right.
And the expectations that may be placed upon you to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And if you're not able to do that, then there's something wrong with you, or
Right.
you're no longer part of this family structure.
I'm going to go
That's
a step further and say that's cultural. Like,
yes,
depending on the culture, that can really play a key role because not all cultures feel uh carry that same thought process.
yes. That's very true, very much true. So how do we go from this, right? The family structure, all these things, and the expectations, and
Hmm.
when these begin to, right, begin to impact the day-to-day of the person, how they are responding in the workplace, how
Right.
they're responding in the home, how they're responding even when they are engaging socially.
Hmm.
The behavioral changes that need to take place um, need to be, as I would say, holistic to the individual as possible.
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
can somebody do that from a money lens in the
Right.
society that we live in?
So I think we were talking about this the other day. I think you have to rethink your family structure and how that looks, right? And the one thing I think about is with my family, generally with people in culturally, in the past, we said our children had to be out of the house with no real
Oh, yeah.
financial foundation at age 20, 21, whatever it is. It was at an early age, right? And as children, I knew that once I hit that 21 age, if I was either in school or if I was working, one of them had to happen, and I had to be able to carry my own bills and survive on my own without no real foundation or know-how of how to create financial security. And I think our generation, this generation of people, we need to rethink that structure, that process, to give the next generation a stable foundation to move forward. Whether that be, you know, life insurance, whether that be a whole life insurance that creates wealth on its own, whatever it is, whether it be, allowing your children to stay in the home until maybe their mid 20s, mid 30s, where they have a little bit more stability, employment wise, financial wise. They have, a couple tens of thousands saved up,
Setting
whatever that
up
is for
funds
you.
for them, kind of
Right.
like setting up trust funds for them from an
Trust
early age.
funds, yes. Estate planning,
Mhm.
right? Estate planning is really when we're talking about not the next generation, but maybe two or three generations where we're keeping the home in the family as opposed to, oh, mom and dad are no longer here. We can't afford it. Let's get rid of it. You know what I mean? So these are type of things that we want to really think about when we talk about restructuring and reshaping how we think about the family structure and how the family structure should survive, not survive because we've been surviving,
Live.
but how to thrive and grow based on our actions today. Now the problem is a lot of people in our generation don't want to take the because if I'm doing it, I have to take some sacrifices that are inherent for me to stay. All right, this is where we are. We need to build here. What do I need to do? Whether that be spitting out a couple of money for a good attorney, or getting a nice insurance policy, or saving for that home. That first generation of change has to make a deep sacrifice. So each generation after has to make less of a sacrifice.
So my mental health flag started flying when you said that.
Yes, I
There's
know.
two things.
I know.
First is gender as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you have been raised in a cisgender home, the
Mm-hmm.
expectation has been And also depends on the culture, the ethnicity of the home, the religious beliefs in the home.
Yes.
For a male, it may look that way. For a
Mm-hmm.
female, you are only leaving this home when you're married. The sad thing is that is still happening to this day, even with our generation that may have been raised from that lens, that you are not full until have children or until you are married,
Married. Mm-hmm.
until you leave this house when blah, 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 blah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that plays a role. Also, what I heard you say is like, from a cisgender role lens is, as a man, that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And I got to sacrifice all of me, whether from a financial space to make this healthy for the generations to come.
Mm-hmm.
My mental health brain started kicking in. My therapist, because the self-sacrifice that it takes with the hope that the future generation will be able to follow that up is huge, is unrealistic. And part of it is delusional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is no way for us to be able to know what is going to happen once we leave here. Once you leave here as a physical being, there is no way of us knowing that the beings that we leave behind are going to be able to honor what you have left with the same motivation, the same understanding of it, unless you have molded the people behind you, molded them to a point that like, this is what we have to do. And it has to be adjusted in a manner where the society that we live in now, adjusting your children or nephews, nieces, whatever the case may be, if you actually have that level of impact with everything that you have coming at you, for them to understand what the plan generational is, which also brings into people's faiths. If people believe blah, 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 then that's going to happen. If not, this house is going to get sold. Because although they're telling me to rent it out, so that way we can have money coming in and we can take equity from the home and it can pay people's college education, with the understanding that college education in 2024. Right. So I think there needs to be an adjustment to that belief when it comes to, and I told you we were going to crash in this, right?
Yes, I already know.
Generational wealth, because it can cause so much harm for the individual that is here now, that has to live that experience. And if you're not able to float, you're constantly in a space of drowning, then we're doing the exact thing that the parents did with the goal of having generational wealth. They're only witnessing the drowning that's taking place. They're not witnessing the person's ability to float and be able to get these things done in a different manner that is not just work, or invest. And then this generation has seen people lose everything. So there is a lack of trust that takes place here. People have lost their homes. They've lost entire retirements. They lost everything. And now we're telling them, oh, you got to work, you got to invest, you got to do this. I'm going to challenge you on that.
Well, I'm going to say two things. And you're absolutely right. It becomes, because yes, I'm old enough to live where I've seen twice where there were traumatic financial stress on people where they lost everything. Right? The finance guy tells me that yes, you're going to take some losses, but if you have a balanced portfolio of a little bit of everything, eventually things will come back, right? Now they may not come back as quick as you want.
Defense is coming up, but
I already know. Listen, just bear with me, right? I already know. The other part of it is, I know a lot of people. This is where like some people have control where they think they can control 3 or 4 generations ahead. And I'm of the main frame of, I'm gonna get you till I get to the grave. I'm gonna have a foundation for you. You're gonna have some savings for my son. He's gonna have a baseline of what he can grow from on his own. After that, once I feel like, whether God takes me before or whether, I'm able to see him grow and have children, at some point I'm gonna let go and I have to be comfortable with his decisions.
Mhm.
Right? I'm not of the thought process of, he's got to spend the money that I'm saving for him the way I want him to save it. He's got to open this type of business. Like therein lies the stress where we start to control the uncontrollables.
Yes.
I think that's where we get stressed out,
And
right?
I
When we start,
hear emotional flexibility is a need here from what you're
yes,
sharing.
because
Emotional
financial
flexibility,
flexibility, we
yes.
have.
Yeah. And you can't have one without the other.
Hmm.
And the emotional flexibility, that is a very huge challenge for people.
Yes.
And for those who may not know what emotional flexibility is our ability to respond to real life situations in real time in a healthier manner. So that's why it's
Hmm.
very important for us to emotionally be able to experience our emotions as they show up, because it allows you to practice managing them. It allows
Yes.
you to be able to expand, right? It allows you to build some stamina, how to manage them when they actually show up. In
Hmm.
order to be able to have a clear mind to have financial flexibility,
Yes.
with the
Yes.
understanding that the financial flexibility is also a privilege. If
Hmm.
you're making minimum wage and you
Right.
live in one of these cities, it's very challenging, and
So,
it's going to be an additional stressor to try to have some flexibility emotionally,
hmm. Hmm.
which kind of
Hmm.
goes into, our generational wealth and your mental health. And can you begin from that, and then I'll bring in my stuff.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the let's just start with the beliefs, right?
Mhm.
I've had clients that,
I'm
their
gonna
family that say that again.
try to close this. Here we
Oh,
go.
okay.
Uh-huh.
Their family belief is that you never trust the bank, you keep the money at home, right?
My father,
Right? Right? That sounds that, it sounds okay, but the reality
he's a
is
veteran too.
right. But reality is if you want to buy a home, you have to show where the money comes from because, they don't want money laundering, they don't want illegal activity, right? So you have to have some sort of foundation and be like, all right, I can't keep all 40,000 at home. I'm gonna keep maybe half of that and put the rest in the bank, right? That's the financial flexibility, right? And that hopefully that gives you some emotional flexibility to be like, all right, let me meet them halfway, right? Let me at least give them something so they can see what's going on, but you can't be shut off in your beliefs or not be able to grow and be flexible in how you think about, right? I can only protect me, never mind my family, because that's the other part of it. I run into a ton of people. I used to work at a bank where the patriarch kept everything hidden from the children and the mother. Like they had a whole list of stuff, but no one knew about his accounts. No one was on the account as a beneficiary. No one knew anything. So at that point where he's now deceased, now they have to go into a courthouse while mourning, while doing all these other things for 6 and 7 months to figure out the business portion of it. And that's where we get in trouble, where we don't have, as individuals, we don't have a flexible mindset of how to not only build my growth, but also help the generation of others underneath me, whatever have you, right? And that may be because of the environment they come from, but flexibility, as you said, is paramount when we're talking about generational responsibilities. Because we can all, as you can attest to, a parent can have 3 kids and you can have 3 different personalities, 3 different ways to do things, and we have to be flexible in how we deal with that, but still keeping a foundation, a sound financial foundation to help grow for the future, but also to help live for now.
as you share that, one of the things that came up for me is, so in Puerto Rico, there's family land. And there used to be a lot of family land. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like, so how did they come? How did my family, maternal side of the family, how did they come into so much land? How the heck did this happen? No one knew, but through the years, that land has been lost to the government. No
And
one was
that's what
taught,
happens.
how do you maintain this? What are the taxes being paid? Because the attorneys will come in, they take all the money, and then people's like, no, you leave the land in the name of those deceased, so that way you don't
Mm-hmm.
lose it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
no one understood how was my great great grandmother and them able to obtain this land and
Right.
them. So as it turns out, um, some of the Black Puerto Ricans, which will
Mm-hmm.
probably be Africans, in my lineage, they were able to go and leave the island and work. Um,
Oh.
and for Europeans, and
Mm-hmm.
they will get paid in land.
Oh,
And
okay.
somehow my great great grandmother figured out she was able to get some cattle, and I think she had inherited her cattle from her father.
Mm.
But then she switched her name, she changed her
Uh,
name
right.
because her siblings, they were fighting for stuff. So she changed her name and did whatever she knew to do. I don't know how she knew how to do this, but she ended up with
With
a
the deed.
whole ton of land and
Ah.
a whole ton of all these things that we like. So how did she have cattle? So she had from pigs to cows
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
goats to they used to do charcoal, all these things in the farmland. But that generate is stopped. So by the
Yes.
time it got to my mom's generation, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that somehow got lost because everything was kept secret.
Right.
That's the way
Right.
they found trunks buried in,
Yes.
in the land that she had money and all these things there, and that just got dispersed. And
Lost.
no one actually learned how to maintain the land. And now there's little land left, and they're still having
Mm-hmm.
those issues because no one wants to really take on the responsibility that comes along with that,
Right. Right.
along with the financial responsibilities that are going to be needed. And the
Mm-hmm.
belief has been, this is for the family. So if it's for the family, then the responsibility comes in. There's gonna need to be some financial responsibility in order to
Right.
maintain this in the
Right.
family,
Right.
right?
And
So
is it
it could have
shared or is
been
it on one person?
I'm
That's
uh
the question.
so that's the thing. Either that one person that decided to pay for all those generations that were not those that were not paid, but
Mm-hmm.
then they end up still having to show up again because there was
Right.
no education provided, fiscal education provided enough for them to how to manage this
Right.
wealth of land that they continue to lose on an annual basis. So every generation they lose and lose.
Lost less and less and
You
less.
only have now a little bit left, and they
Mm-hmm.
still don't know or don't want to take the responsibility that comes with it, which
Right.
goes into the generational responsibilities, environment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Beliefs, the individuality that we live in as a culture here in the United
Mm-hmm.
States. What does wealth really look like?
Mm-hmm.
What does community really look like? And what is status? And by status, meaning your role in the family structure and
Mm-hmm.
then the status you may be presenting to the world and to your social network.
Right. Do they meet up? Are they equivalent? What you present
Exactly.
actuality is.
They support your values? Do they support your beliefs? And do they support your pockets?
Right. As you were talking, I was thinking of two things. One, so I don't know if you remember when Prince died. He didn't have a will, he didn't have beneficiaries, he didn't have anything. I think his net worth were well into the hundreds of millions. It took his family, I think, 5 to 10 years to actually resolve his estate, and the government still got like half of it.
Mm.
Which brings me to two things. Brings me to two things. One is if you're talking about really being involved in generational wealth, you have to plan. You have to have an estate plan, at least a found because that's your foundation to help whomever follows you to now, whether they follow the plan or whether they are like, I don't feel like dealing with the land, at least they know what's going on, right? Which brings me to my other note, which we haven't really talked about. We've been talking about gender as individuals, but I think when we talk about generational, we need to talk about planning
As a
as a
whole.
group.
Yes,
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 not just one person making
yes.
a plan and doing it and putting a responsibility on that person, because that in itself is another stress that we don't talk about. Oh yeah, everyone expects me to do something, and then when you do it, now everyone is mad, but no one else
Stepped
put.
up to do it.
Yeah, so those are two things I think as we get further into this, we need to really talk about being able to plan as a group, and as that group now setting a foundation of how at least the generational piece is going to begin. You know, whether it continues is up to how much you maintain that estate plan. But those are two things that I think creates less stress and allows for flexibility because now you have more than one person having input into what. Because as we know, two heads are better than one, three are great. So everyone may have different thoughts, processes, and those are what creates more of a community, which we
Mm-hmm.
talk about in generational responsibility, because the responsibility is to the community. And the community has as much of a responsibility to have input into the plan.
So I think this will require a lot of abundance of information and a motivation to want to learn about this, uh,
Yes.
and to really have a full understanding as to the people that you have in front of you. By
Mm-hmm.
family, close friends, partners, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to have the transparency necessary in order to be successful with this. This
Right.
is not, it is individuals working as a community to try to get to that, right? Which it comes to the status has to be put to the side because that comes with our ego, a lot of it,
Yes.
right? Then
Yes.
the environment in which we're in, if we are privileged enough to choose the environment we're in, then it allows us to have more of a choice in the communities that we participate in. And
Mm-hmm.
then those kind of things begin to support our beliefs, right? And we
Right.
start with a wealth of information, then okay, now I'm able to include so and so that we have a similar thought
Right.
process and a similar belief, and we can feel comfortable enough building this relationship from a vulnerable standpoint. And with
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability, meaning we can actually have real conversations and
Right.
allow ourselves to experience the fears and discomforts that will show up that can allow us to then, okay, these are some of the decisions that we can begin to make. But
Yes.
very important here is our ability for self-care. So within these responsibilities that come with generational wealth, without self-care, you're not getting no one. So still
Mhm.
got that, right? You can't do
Absolutely.
anything without this,
Yes.
right? And this is, it's our entire body is basically look at it as a memory. It's like it's cellular, our
Mm-hmm.
entire system. You know, our central nervous system goes throughout, our polyvagal nerve goes throughout our system. That's why we feel, then think.
Yes.
But we don't have an understanding of what we're feeling,
What we're feeling, right.
to allow us to think clear enough to be able to take the steps that will be necessary.
That
So
awareness.
he will be how to teach people or for people to get curious about how do I deal with this and how do I
Mm-hmm.
teach those around me how to deal with this, whether
Mm-hmm.
it is
Mm-hmm.
by example or by asking, hey, do you need some support in that? Because I've been working in X, Y, and Z, and it's allowing me to breathe better. It's allowing me to think better. It's allowing me to slow down, right? So that's where we're building a community that can allow you to then be able to think clearer. It's like, okay, these are the steps that I can take that can allow me to begin to prepare for the generational wealth if that's something that we're
Right.
both interested in as
Right.
individuals.
And I think the mindfulness of that will create a more calmer and a more sound ability to make decisions.
Yes.
Right. If you don't know the trigger of it, of your anxiety or whatever you're feeling, if you just feel it but don't know where it's coming from, then you can't go, all right, let me take a step back. Let me take a deep breath. I know why I'm feeling like this, right? I know that if I make a snap decision, if I make a snap decision to just go emotionally shop right now when I need to do something else, right? If I decide, all right, I'm not gonna, I know I want to shop. Let me save that $150 and put it towards, my savings account or, a bill that I need to get rid of so I can get better credit. So then I can, if we have that thought process of, yes, I'm gonna feel better for a moment if I shop, but if I pay that bill off, now my credit goes up. Now I can get a better interest rate on a home. Now I can, and there's more steps to it. If we can kind of come to that first part of the mindfulness piece, I think we have more time to really blossom and grow and work through those things.
So what would you say would be the steps to take when it comes to generational wealth as the individual now, as to what is being experienced now?
So I would say a few things. I had some notes, right? I was thinking about this the other day. The first thing was from a financial point of view. I'll let you deal with the emotion stuff, but from a financial point of view, you want to do a couple of things. One is you want to have a life insurance policy for yourself, right? In the event that something happens in life, if you have children or other family members, get a sound life insurance policy that helps at the baseline, take care of any burial. At the benefit of beyond the baseline, take care of your family, your children, whatever have you, right? The next thing I would say is have a estate plan and a will, right? That lays out the plan of whatever you want to do and communicate this with family. We talked about being in a community. Communicate your will and your estate plan with your trusted family member, right? Don't just keep it to yourself because one, that's going to cause stress internally on you. I don't care how you feel, how you think, oh, I can deal with it. No, internally, if you're doing something that you know in your soul isn't correct, it's going to have an effect on you. Now, it's going to come out in different ways, but it will eat at you, right? But if you can communicate those plans with your family, this is my will, this is my estate plan, this is where my policy is. These things will help in that individual growth of what you can do as a person, right? Um, and then, those are I would say those are the first three things. Start there, and that'll give you a good foundation to move forward.
And what is involved in the estate planning? Like what things go on that if you're able to give brief?
So estate planning, I would say you have to hire a good attorney, right?
Mhm.
Because certain things need to be
Can people
uh,
do it on their own? For those who don't have money to have an attorney?
you can do it on your own. I know there's some websites that allow you to do some estate planning, and estate planning is really just a will. And if you have additional stuff, you can do your own will. If you don't have that much, just knock out your will. I think you can buy a will online and create it yourself. But if you have children, if you have, children outside of your marriage, you're married. If you have a difficult type of family structure, I would say get a professional. If you have something simple, I would say go online, right? Type it out. They have prompts to put it in its right place for you, and you can download it as a PDF and print it out and have it. But now, every couple of years, I would say go back to it because, as we know, life changes every few years, and you need to re-up on that stuff.
So it's kind of like putting a reminder,
Yes, put in a
right?
reminder.
A reminder, this is something that you can do to allow you to remind you to update it.
Right.
As you were sharing,
Oh,
something that came up for me also is
mhm,
healthcare proxies. You want to have a healthcare proxy like now, which
mhm,
allows you to decide who can make decisions, or it allows you to provide details as to who you want to make decisions in the event that you are not able to make a decision for
right.
yourself. You're gonna say something else?
And lastly, beneficiaries, check all your beneficiaries. If you have bank accounts, if you have retirement accounts, whatever it is, make sure the beneficiary is updated. Make sure you have someone as a beneficiary. Again, those things, your family members, if life happens, something happens to you, and there was no one on it to now claim your funds and help with whatever, they're in court, like Prince's family for 5 to 10 years trying to figure out life.
Got it. And can you provide like 3 to 4 financial tips?
Um, there's no quick, easy fix, right? Long-term investing, there's no like, whatever you're gonna do. If you do crypto, whatever, just know that there's a long process to it, right? Whatever you invest in, know what you're investing in, right? Also make sure you save for a rainy day, right? Itemize accounts, rainy day account, today account, future account, right? So you got 3 accounts. Even if you're putting $1 in each account, you don't have a lot to put in. You're putting $1, you're putting 50 cents, whatever it is. The thought process is I'm training myself to grow, not training myself to survive.
Okay. Yeah. And as it relates to coping with their emotional discomforts that are going to show up, it's very important to first we start off with mindfulness no matter what. And the mindfulness comes in from, I'm just going to pause. I tell this to all my clients. I'm just going to stop. I just need you to stop. Practice stopping. And by stopping, then, let me breathe. We're just going to slow down our breathing. You can do all that because our body already breathes, right? It's like this is something that we just do. So you stop, you slow down your breathing, and then it's gonna allow you to have better decision making. It allows you to think clearer. It allows you to like, okay, what is the steps that I can take that can allow me to be able to respond to this versus reacting to this? And as it relates to emotional flexibility, allow yourself to experience all of your emotions, even the ones that you don't like. If you don't allow yourself to experience those emotions, and you're going to hear me repeat this every time. If you don't allow yourself to experience these emotions, you are literally stopping yourself from emotionally growing. You are stopping yourself from being present from you. You are stopping yourself from being vulnerable with you. And you're stopping yourself from emotional growth and being able to expand, whether it is with the relationship with yourself, with relationship with others. It is extremely important to go through the yucky emotions. It doesn't mean that I'm asking you to stay stuck in those emotions. It's just like, oh, I don't like this yucky feeling. Okay, I understand. Why do I have this yucky feeling? Oh, give yourself a moment and then, you know what? I'm going to get back to you. Let me do this now. And then I'll get back to that emotions with the responsibility that you have to get back to the emotion, right? We're building emotional stamina in order to get to the results that you want. So hopefully this was helpful, right? We're going to have a few more of these once a month.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions or any feedback? We are 5 minutes over. We want to be very respectful of your time. If you have anything to say, you can share it now. If not, then we're going to upload this recording and share it with you.
Yes. And invite others if they you feel like it's going to benefit them.
Yeah.
We invite them to see this recording, but also just notify of our future ones we have coming up.
Yes, absolutely. So if not, we are finishing up and we'll see you in the next time. Yeah. Bye. Hi, my name is Nancy Andino. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a certified EMDR and trauma therapist. And we have
My name is Lamar Parker, a financial professional and a licensed mortgage loan originator.
Yes, and we're bringing to you today generational wealth and your mental health. And part of this project was the motivation behind this project is to be able to teach people or provide them with a space where they can get curious about their financial and mental health and the role it plays in their day-to-day responses to how they're functioning in the world, their day-to-day interactions, how they engage in socially and relationships and family and the workplace, so that way they can have more tools in their toolbox to respond in a financially responsible, but also in a responsible mental health way. And we want to be able to share this with as many people as possible to open up the conversation. And we're starting with generational wealth.